And so as we look at these self-portraits, there is a sense in which they are illusions, inventions, but at the same time they are great disclosures of the inner person. When we go to the MFA in Boston, I will go back and look at this again. It's a phenomenal painting. The painting is a small rectangle panel about the size of this piece of paper, just that size. It looks so big projected. But in that small oil painting on a wood panel, he gives a statement as a young artist, now 23, of what art is all about. He holds the tools of his trade in his hands, his brushes and mahl stick. A mahl stick is used to kind of balance the brush to do the fine brushwork. We see the grindstone for preparing pigment behind him. We see, I'm not sure if you can see it too well, pots on the table, kind of just barely there. You see the palettes on the wall. So there's this artist. But of course, what catches our attention immediately is the artist himself and his massive painting on this huge easel. The way Rembrandt works the perspectives here is he has dwarfed himself backstage and put the easel and painting right up in the foreground. And so you're kind of overwhelmed by that. Even as you look at this small panel, you say, that's a huge painting. It's much bigger than the panel itself by the way he's painted this. And so he's saying, my art is everything. My art's much bigger than I am. But then you can't see what the painting is. It's kind of disappointing. But what's on that? You want to reach in there and turn it around so you can see it, but you can't do that. So it's elusive. It's enigma. What's on that painting? How do we know how he paints? We can't see his painting. Well, yes, you can, because you see his painting right here of a painting. And you see what incredible craftsman he is. Just look at the way he handles the materials. Look at the flooring. You can't quite see it, but when you're there, look it up, you see this metal work here. But what really catches my eye is the way that he has done this flaking away of the plaster so you can see the brick work behind the plaster. The damp in Amsterdam rises and eats away by moisture at the corners, and so the buildings start to crumble. And one of the themes in Rembrandt is the way in which buildings and people crumble. And he paints imperfection. He paints reality as he sees it. So you know he's a great painter, but what is his painting? And all you know about the painting is that it is illumined by this straight line, a brilliant. You can't quite catch how brilliant that line is, but it's much brighter than the light that comes from the implied window at the left there. It, as it were, soaks up all the light from that window. It is the light, which says this painting is this flash of light. And where does that light come from? Well, it comes from the artist. But the artist is not at the painting doing the fine brushwork. He's standing way back from the painting. And what is he doing? He's thinking. He's imagining. He's conceiving. And that's the point. That this art comes from the artist's imagination. That's where it begins. And I've stood there and wondering, what is he imagining? What is he thinking? What is he looking at? Now, many say, well, he's looking at the painting he's going to do. He's looking at the canvas. But I see his line of vision looking right at me. I'm his subject. I'm, as it were, his model in the studio. I'm standing there in his line of vision. He's going to do a portrait, of me. What is he seeing in me? The master artist at work. Well, he paints all kinds of portraits of himself. Here he's dressed in ceremonial robe as the great young artist. Whoops, wrong button. Try this. Uh-oh. How do we fix that? That's not how he painted. This is an etching, and etchings were done by taking a piece of copper, putting wax over the copper, drawing with a needle through the wax, and then removing the wax and rubbing ink on the copper, and then printing paper where the ink had gone in, where the needle had drawn. It's a very involved process, and it's so easy to ruin it. Just smudge it before you know. Am I supposed to push something or not push something? Or make it up as I go here. So this painting that we're going to see, maybe you just go on the next one. Or maybe I'm wearing something that's electrifying the whole system here. And probably it was easier to do artwork without computers and all this kind of thing. But what you're going to see here is, I hope, a etching of Rembrandt looking really upset, kind of etching, I hope when you see it, that reminds me of myself early in the morning before my first cup of coffee. And then that same face of that etching is put on, and you'll see this in the gallery, the face of a beggar. And so you'll see a beggar that looks just like Rembrandt. The beggar is Rembrandt. Rembrandt has become the beggar, taken the place of the beggar. And you may have seen this in some of the brochures around campus. Or this beggar is sitting on a bank kind of along the roadside and kind of staring at you, growling at you. There we are. Thank you very much. So Darlene can verify that that's how I look early in the morning. And then let's go to the next slide. Maybe I'll just tell you. There we go. See the same face on the beggar. This is in the show now in the gallery, and it's a phenomenal show. We are so fortunate to have this show of Rembrandt here on campus. And I hope you'll take time to go around and see it. They're very small etchings. You'll need a magnifying glass. You'll need to take time to absorb what's happening. But here Rembrandt is the beggar. The beggar is Rembrandt. This beggar is not a cleaned up beggar like you'll see at a church where they have soup for the beggars off the street. This beggar is panhandling, foul-mouthed, ungrateful, dangerous beggar. And so Rembrandt identifies in this and many others of his drawings and paintings and etchings with all classes of people, and in this case with the most despicable, the most reprehensible. In Rembrandt's society, this is Amsterdam, where everything's clean and nobody's a mess, and beggars are kicked out of the way. Rembrandt humanizes them, gives them a sense of dignity, puts his own face on the beggar. And then let's see if this works. There we are. Now there's Rembrandt. Rembrandt moved to Amsterdam in 1633 and married Saskia in 1634. This was done in 1635, 29 years old. During the 8 years with Saskia, they had an exhilarating, successful, wild time in Amsterdam. This time of his greatest success. And she shows up repeatedly in Rembrandt's paintings, etchings, drawings. She's in so many of them. And here she is sitting on the lap of Rembrandt, carousing in a tavern. Rembrandt becomes the scandalous prodigal son. This is a self-mocking, self-depreciating image. Where do you ever see a portrait of a respectable man in this culture showing his teeth mid-cackle? You just don't do that.